Hey folks, my name is Dave and welcome to the new shop for NTD Racing here in Monument, Colorado. It is a total mess. There is nothing where it's supposed to be right now. But this story today is all about our experience at the Baja 1000 and how Honcho did an amazing job and our team did also. I'm going to talk about the logistics getting there, some of the amazing stories that happened during the race, and then we'll go over a little bit of a post-mortem of Honcho and how it did at the end. I'll also put at the end our interview that we had at the contingency day, which I thought was really cool. So if you want to stick around and check that out, but let's first get to this video. So I don't know, is that bad? That's so bad. Transmission's eating itself, but it's really gonna only last like 600 or 700 more miles. Yeah. So I think it's going to be some hard shifts, whatever, but it's going to do it. I think the filter will take care of it. Let's go put it back up. Well, now that I'm home, the first thing I figure I had to do is just wash the truck, just get it clean to get a good idea of what was broken, what needs to be fixed, and what is still good. And as I'm washing the truck, just the dust and everything is coming off and all the dirt and the smells of Mexico. I'm telling you, there is silt everywhere. There are branches. How many trees did we drive through? I have no idea, but there are branches and just the smells come back to you and it puts you right back in that place. And you just remember what it was like either cruising through the desert, digging yourself out of the silt, and all these amazing experiences that you did during the day and the night in the Mexico desert with your friends. It's just amazing. It takes me back, and I can't wait to talk about it. Let's go talk about how we got there and all the crazy stuff that happened during this race. All right, so what is it like to race the Baja 1000? Well, first off, you got to plan this. And I will tell you, me personally, I've been planning this for probably more than about 20 years. But getting into it, you got to have a truck. And if you are interested in about how we got Honcho, I have a whole build series on building Honcho using Leg Mirror Systems tools. And also now I'm building Lefty. And I'm taking all the lessons I learned from Honcho and I'm trying to be even more descriptive on how I build all the stuff for Lefty, whether it's suspension, geometry, you name it. Check out those build series, and I'm going to be continuing those as we try to get ready for the next couple of races. But on top of that, the other logistics that go into a race are just enormous. When you're talking about just the race planning and pre-planning where fuel is going to go and those kinds of things. But then you got to figure out where you're going to sleep. And we got Bear on our team, and he always gets us amazing houses with plenty of parking that's all protected, and that is a huge deal. We got our own chef. My brother Mike is a professional chef. And he cooks just every single meal, and they're all awesome. And our rule is we sit down every night for a family-style dinner. Everyone sits down together, and to me, that's like one of the most amazing parts of this thing. We bring our own doctor, Dr. Danny. He's my co-driver, an amazing dude. There's a ton of other tasks to be done. We're just moving stuff around. We're working on the truck. Josh is just tearing the truck apart, looking over every bolt. We have David Lasser is getting into our Gaia GPS files, and he's building all the race files and loading up all the dangers and all the stuff that we need to know for the race. And that stuff, the more prep that you do before the race, the easier the race goes. It is hard to describe what the day before and the 2 days before the race are like unless you've ever been there. But just to kind of give you an idea, this is such a big deal in Mexico that kids get out of school for 2 days so they can go see trophy trucks, and parents get to go see trophy trucks and race cars and class 10s and all these amazing bugs and those kinds of things. And so we're out there, and we start going through the conga line, and we kind of end up in the very back of it. We'll probably have about a half a mile of a line that we have to wade through before we get to the front. And what that is called, it's called contingency and tech inspection. Contingency is they put a bunch of stickers on your car, and if you win and you got the stickers on the car, then they might give you some money and that kind of stuff, like say from King Shock or Rugged radios or PCI Race radios or something like that. And then you end up at the very end of this thing at tech inspection, where they're going to go through all the parts of your car. Now, your chassis is inspected before you get to Baja, but they're going to check out your fire extinguishers, your helmets, and all those kinds of things. But in between that, where you get in the line and the very end, it is a party. It's like, I think Dana Brown from Dust to Glory explains it right. It is like Mardi Gras. I mean, just thousands of people. And the currency of Mexico in the Baja 1000 is stickers. And this year we brought stickers, we brought koozies. And it was so cool. You didn't get a koozie unless you had a beer in your hand. And it was so cool to be driving by people and they're showing us their koozie and their beer and they're cheering us on. It was just amazing. And then finally, as we kind of get through the crowd, we get up towards the front, and we're going to go up on stage, and this is kind of your chance to talk about your sponsors. So I'm going to go ahead and put this part right at the very end of this video, and it'll be my whole interview, and I get a chance to talk about some of our amazing sponsors, which I will also talk about during this video, because I will tell you that their products were amazing, our pivot cases and how well they perform, and also the fact that we just went through the most grueling race I've ever seen, and we never removed a lug nut. We never changed a tire. Everything broke except for our Milestar tires, and that is saying something. But I'll get more to that a little bit later. Let's go ahead and talk about race day. Okay, today is race day. Let me first orient you to where we're at. We got New Mexico, Arizona, California here, and we zoom in. We got Mexico, Baja Peninsula, and this is where the race is going to take on about 850 miles of the race is what we got. We're using the Gaia GPS map here, which is really super awesome. You can turn on the waypoints, and as we zoom in, you can kind of see all the details that we were driving with out there, and all the waypoints telling us where turns were, virtual checkpoints, all the miles, and all those kinds of things. And those were on both of our iPads in the truck both the whole time. I'm going to turn off the waypoints because it just gets a little bit cumbersome as you watch this thing. Big picture for the Mexico Peninsula here is you kind of got Highway 1 kind of going all the way down from San Diego through Ensenada all the way down the west coast over here. You got Highway 5 coming down through San Felipe on the east coast, Cia Cortez side, and then splitting the two is Highway 3, and those will be the main roads that we're talking about and using during the race today. Realize that if you get all the way down here on Highway 3 where we had our chase crews most of the time, you can't get over here to where our Team 4 is going to be unless you drive all the way back to Ensenada and all the way back down, or you can find some way through some crazy roads, but that's difficult. So here's our game plan for the race. Is what we're going to do is the race is going to start in Ensenada. Our headquarters is right around here. What we don't want to do is we don't want to put all of our chase teams down here in Ensenada. So we just send our race truck down there and say, good luck. We'll see you guys later on. And then we're going to drive all the way over here to Ojos Negros, about race mile 37. This is over here, about 33 is a speed zone. Cars will be trucking along in here, and where we will find ourselves at the beginning of the race is right here at mile 37. We'll pick it up from there with some really awesome video. So David and Bear rip off the start line. The transmission, despite having all its problems, the truck sounds really good. And we head down with the chase team to race mile 37, and this is what we see while we're waiting for Honcho to show up. So Honcho pulls in, we give it our first full look over, and it looks amazing. Honcho's doing really well. I think last year we blew a tire at mile 17, so far we're already doing better. And there is still the transmission issues that we started with. So we knew we started with a transmission that wasn't great. It only worked in sport shift. Normal drive mode doesn't work on the transmission, so we are just sport shifting the whole thing, which is kind of what we want to do anyway. But it would be nice to have a full transmission. And I do think that at this point in the race, we are starting to lose power through the transmission, and that will be an issue later on. The other issue we're having is our GoPros, and I'm not really sure why they're not working well, besides the fact that McMillan's just ran one of our GoPros over. But the GoPro that was in the truck, we didn't think was working well because the screen wasn't working. So I put another GoPro into the truck, and this is my mistake. I didn't realize I had it in time lapse. So almost all of the video I have for the next 10 hours is all in time lapse. But I think you get the idea as you kind of watch it, and I'll be able to talk through some of the events on the race as we watch the time lapse video. So during the race, you can almost think about having two separate teams. You have your driver contingency, and when they're in the trucks, they're drivers. And when they're not in the trucks, they're either trying to rest or they're part of our chase team. And the chase part of this is bigger, I think, and more dangerous and everything than the driver part. Because when you're in the truck, you got helmets on and fire suits and roll cages. And when you're a chase guy, you're kind of out there and you really need to use your common sense and pay attention to what's going on so you don't get hurt. I also tell you, being a chase guy is also such a blast, because while you're waiting for the truck, you're watching other trucks go by, you're having a campfire, you're chilling out, having some drinks and that kind of thing. So it is a ton of fun. So talking about the drivers, we did think a lot this year about how to manage fatigue. And again, I said the first driver was going to mile 70 driver group, and then we were going to swap out. And we end up swapping out probably more than most other teams, because we figure as long as if we're putting gas in the truck, we have enough time to do a driver swap. And that allows you to kind of get out of the truck, talk to your navigator, get a little bit fresh, get a drink, take a leak if you need to do those kinds of things while you're not in the truck. And then by the time you get in the truck again, because two teams will get back in the truck a second time, you're totally fresh and ready to go again. And everything is fresh in your mind about what you did and how you're going to communicate with your navigator, which ends up being a big deal. But then let's talk about the race. And man, I don't even know how to describe what we saw. In fact, Danny and I were driving so many times, and I looked over, I was like, Dan, I have no idea how we're going to explain what we're going through out here. It's just impossible. And we went through stuff that, literally I would expect you to see in the King of the Hammers. I mean, just some gnarly rocks, and just trucks were rolled over all over the place. We were going around trucks that were on their side. We did, every time we went by somebody who was on their side or something like that, we did stop and just kind of make eye contact, make sure they're okay. And if they say they're okay, then we would press. We were asked by one team to help them roll themselves back over. So we do back up to their car. We tie off, and we're able to flip their car back over. I don't know what team it was. I wish I did, because they seem like pretty cool guys. They were super thankful, and then we were on our way for the race. Just one more. I think the funniest story is we're driving along and we're cruising kind of through this like wooded area, and we pass this truck that they're doing maintenance to. They're fixing something on the side of the road, and we see one guy, and it's obvious that his truck's up on jacks, but it's getting cold outside, and this guy has made a fire, and the fire is spread, and the tree next to him, I would call maybe a 20-foot tall, it's a full mature tree, and it is completely engulfed in flames. He's got this, we're going by, it's a surreal scene. We look at him and he's looking at us, and he's got this look on his face like I've made bad choices. We kept going. I hope that guy was okay, but at least he was warm. As we continued through this terrain, this just amazing location, and it's just so intense. And at one point we kind of crest this hill, and there's a Sea of Cortez. We have gone from the west side all the way to the east side of the peninsula, and it's just this, I can't even describe what we saw. The sun was setting, just that red hue over everything as the sun was setting. I look over at Danny, I was like, Dan, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. You got my cell phone, take my cell phone out and just get a quick video, just to make sure we have either the GoPro or my phone to have a video of what's going on right here. So Danny takes my camera out, my phone, and he's like, hey Dave, would you like it in hot dog mode or in hamburger mode? And as he flips the phone around in his hand, whoop, it falls onto the floor. And we're like fully strapped in, head, neck device. So you can basically kind of look down with your eyes. And he's like, I'll just kick, the phone is on the floor and we'll get it later. I'm like, all right, that sounds about as good as I guess it can get. My phone's on the floor. That's less than optimum. So we go another 10 miles or something like that. And eventually we got to stop because somebody's stuck ahead of us. We're not going there anywhere, obviously, for a little while. So we stop and jump out and take a leak. And Danny goes, hey, Dave, man, your phone is gone. I'll tell you later on. My phone is, I'm like, are you serious? My phone's lost. I will tell you later on, we go back and do a find my phone, and there it is, still pinging itself in the middle of the Mexican desert before it goes out. I don't know. If somebody's got my phone out there, I'd appreciate to have it back. But if you're wondering where all the great video footage is, it's on that phone. So here's one other thing that is so difficult to describe. I've driven through sand before. I've driven through gravel. And I've driven through silt before, but never with a truck that's having some power issues. And there was also, I think, a learning curve because maybe when we drove through silt before, we just made it through every time. And this time, we get stuck 3 times in the silt. And I will tell you that we kind of coined this new term, and it's called silt anxiety. Because you'll be driving along, you're like, oh my gosh, we're blasting through, and and you're like, I just don't know if silt is on the other side of whatever I'm going to hit, so I'm going to hit everything with some speed, and you end up just driving faster than you intended to, because you're like, whenever I hit the silt, I just want to have enough power and speed to carry me through it. And I will tell you that as a team, I think we had to dig ourselves out like 8 times. So again, we had shifting problems with the transmission. I think the transmission is robbing almost half of our power. The power is just not there, so you just kind of like just get bogged down in the silt. And there is nothing worse than having to get out of the truck in the middle of the night with a shovel and dig yourself out of silt. We got good at it after a while, but that is just something we didn't want to do. And I think that later on in the race, that ended up paying us, because I think we got silt anxiety, and guys were like, I can either drive over that bush or I can go through the silt, and they were taking the bush, so the front end of the truck basically started coming on. So we hand off Honcho at about mile 200. So Danny and I drive about 130 miles, and we hand it off to Denny and Mike, and the truck's not doing great. And this is one of those moments where you're like you could see it in their face. They're like, oh my gosh, we're about to take a truck that isn't working perfectly, and we're about to go into the desert. I mean, and that takes some serious guts to take that thing to say, I know things are going to go right, but I also trust that you guys will come get us if something goes wrong. And they're absolutely right. They take off, and I guess the words from them is that they were about 5 minutes into it and just having the best time of their lives. So they drive into the night, through midnight. And the rest of the chase team, we're going to send 2 guys down south of San Felipe to kind of chase them as far as we possibly can until we lose them into the mountains. We can't chase them anymore. The rest of the team is going to try to find a couple minutes to get a good nap in the desert. So we go to sleep. And when we wake up, we have okay internet. We're able to get some internet there, and we see that they've gone from race mile 200 to race mile 425, and we're supposed to go, race mile 450. Again, another just absolutely magic moment as a truck owner team is to see these guys that you sent off into the desert in the machine that you built, and you see them come back, and it's during the sunrise. And here are just some shots of these guys just as they come back. And David Laster is laying over the back of my tonneau cover in my truck, and he's just getting some amazing shots of the truck as it's coming back. So we pull into the 4th driver change. We're going to add a little bit more gas in. Mike had just done a great job. Now the right rear fender is kind of starting to fall off, so we're going to unbolt that and take that thing off of the truck. And going back, about 20 miles before, and we're talking to Mike on the radios, he's like, hey, my brakes just don't feel really good. And I'm like, man, suck it up. Pump the brakes a couple times, dude. It's manual brakes. So I'm doing a walk around to the truck now and just making sure that everything's good to go. And Angela, with these eagle eyes, says, hey, is that supposed to be like that? I look down, and the brake line for the driver's side brake banjo bolt and the banjo fitting there has completely come disconnected. And we no longer have front brakes. Mike has been going completely on rear brakes only. So what I will end up doing is we're trying to figure it out. There's, that banjo bolt is very specific. It's got the holes in it and everything, so the brake fluid can go through it. And so I end up doing is I basically take the T-fitting off of the brakes, and I just run all the brake pressure just to the front passenger side brake. And that's all we got. Now we got 3 brakes at this point. So we got a transmission that isn't doing really well. We only got 3 brakes. We're starting to remove parts, but I'll tell you what, our tires are still rocking it. And this is where we send Josh and Ryan out into the desert, and they're going to go through some rough stuff. Knowing that they're going all the way to the other side of the peninsula. Remember, you can kind of think of Mexico as on the west side you got 1, on the east side you got 5, and then you kind of got 3 as a diagonal kind of going through there. And we were parking our chase team right around that junction of the 5 and 3. What we're going to do is we want to make sure that they got so far to go. It's going to be so gnarly. We want to make sure that they have a tire, and also some maintenance capability on the other side of the peninsula. So we will drive our truck all the way up and around to the west side of the island to meet them there. And I will tell you what, when those guys got there, they looked dirtier than I've ever seen anybody look before. They had been through some stuff. The truck was just beaten because they'd driven over some bushes, but they looked so happy. They were just to see, again, your team, you didn't expect to see them. is such a morale booster. And so we finally run into them. After you drive along the ocean, you kind of turn and head back up the river, up towards the highway. And you go through, I think, some of the biggest whoops I've ever driven through. And the truck definitely takes quite a beating here. I think it took some pretty hard hits during this point. And this will be the point now where I think that the transmission mount will completely liberate itself. The front right spindle will almost rip itself off of the tie rod, and then also the steering box will rip itself out of its mount. Somewhere along there, probably. We stop at this point, and we take a look over the truck, and we see transmission fluid all over the back. Okay, we got to do something about the transmission, or it's only going to get worse. We know that the part they're going to drive through next is difficult, because this is where we got stuck last year, and it basically ended our race at race mile 120 going the other way. So they need to have a truck that'll drive going through this way. So we end up using some ratchet straps to basically secure the transmission and keep the engine and transmission from lunging forward when they hit stuff. And that was a good enough fix, and we sent them on their way. And I'll tell you what, we started driving all the way back around, and we finally hear that they made it to the other side. It's a kind of record time. I'll tell you what, Josh is quite a driver. He did an amazing job. Not only is he a great mechanic, but man, can drive a truck also. He gets to the other side, and they hand the truck off to Bear and David again. And then now they are off into the night for some more racing. So this is the part where I think the communication just gets a little bit foggy as far as what happens. But again, there is no cell reception for almost all of Mexico, of the area that we're going to be in, except for that place where the 3 and the 5 kind of meet over there down in the south. But where we are racing at this point, no cell reception. No any reception besides our handheld radios. And so we start driving. We stop at our headquarters for a little while. We take a quick nap, and then we start driving over to try to meet Bear and David. And I guess at some point, somewhere around Ojos Negros, we cross in the night with the other chase guys going back home. We still think they're out in the desert. So we're like calling them on the radio the whole time. We're trying to find them. And we never find them, and we never find the race truck. We have no idea what is going on with the race truck. And so we're driving back towards Ojos Negros, where at least we know we're supposed to meet them. And we're on Highway 3, and we keep calling them in the clear on the race radio. And then just somewhere there's a crackling voice somewhere in the distance on the radio. And we're like, oh my gosh, we talk to them and say, hey, you guys okay? And then poof, we lose them. We don't get them anymore. We stop on the highway and go backwards, drive backwards down the highway until we can get reception with them again. And so what they relay to us, and mind you, we are now at race time. We're at 36 hours. So we can no longer finish under regulation. So the race is over for us. We could finish the distance, but we'll still get a DNF. And we're talking to them, and the transmission's overheating, the engine's overheating. I think Bear has burned his hands. He's seeing sparks come off the steering. I'm like, there's no chance sparks are coming off the steering. But as it turns out, the steering shaft, since the steering box is liberated itself from its mount, the steering shaft now is rubbing up against the harmonic balancer, and I guess just sending some sparks out the side, which is not the way you want your truck to be driving. They're stuck in the silt, and they are about to go into another, we call it Danger 29, I think. It's another gnarly section. They're at race mile 750, and they got to go through some stuff to get to where we're going to eventually pass off the truck. And at that point, and the other piece of the information was they're right next to a road where they can just drive right to Ojos Negros, so they can take the truck off the race course. And at that point, I'm just like, we have risked enough. The truck is damaged enough, and we're going to send these guys into a place where we might not be able to recover them quite as easily, and we're not going to finish the race anyway. So I decided, get the truck unstuck, and we'll just meet you at Ojos Negros. Go ahead and take it off the race course, and I think we're done for the night. And I'll tell you what, I think everybody felt good. I would tell you that our team is unbelievably proud of how well we did during the race. And when you look at all the things that we broke everything. The front of the truck is hanging off. I mean, everything is broken. But there are two things that I could talk about that held on. Is our pivot mount was rock solid. We went through the craziest stuff. And they just work amazing. And if you're looking for a good solution, and I don't think you can find a better mount that's been more tested. This is one I use as an airline pilot. We have a couple airline pilots on our team. They all use these in the airline world. and they're just amazing. And then number two, the Milestar tires, those Milestar Patagonia mud terrains, unbelievable tires. There were places where other people were getting stuck in the silt, and we were able to power through the silt because those things were like big paddles. They were smooth on the road. And like I said, we never took a lug nut off the truck. Those things lasted the whole time. And that is saying something considering some of the things that we drove through. So huge thanks to Milestar and also Flyboys for providing us with those pivot cases. So thankful to have you guys on the team.
That race was amazing. So many great stories. Let's go ahead and take a quick walk around Honcho. Let me show you the damage that we took. It's amazing that this thing made it as far as it did. And then stick around to the very end. We're going to show you the interview that I had at the contingency. I thought that was really cool. Check it out. All right, first piece of damage. This one we started with, and that's underneath here, our transmission. This is our low car shifter hooked up to our transmission, and this is our only way of shifting the transmission at the very end is we would put it into sport mode, and then we would tap shift it up and down. This little squat switch was taking a little bit of damage there. Also, you can kind of see some bent parts there on that squat switch. But besides that, that was the transmission. I think at the end, we were barely had first gear. There's all kinds of problems, and it started overheating. We had an electrical issue. I got to chase that down. For some reason, our cooling fans to our transmission cooler stopped working, so we got to figure out what happened to cause that. So this is looking at the back of the brake, and you probably heard us talk about the banjo bolt that came out, and there's the hole where the brake fluid all dumped out, and here's our brake line. I'll hook that back up. Just got to get a new bolt in there, clean that out. I'm trying to flush out all the bad fluid, but that should work again. This is the beginning of the damage for the steering. You can kind of see some torn metal up here. That's 3/16 inch plate metal that was put in there. You can see how it's bent down and kind of tearing that thing up there. So we'll cut that out, and we'll probably reinforce it a little bit more before we put that thing in there again. On the other side of this is the steering box. And let's take a look at some of the damage that the steering box took. Okay, so here is the mount for the steering box. You can see that's 1/4 inch plate. And you can see how that's been bent and torn out. The bolt up here at the top has also been sheared off. And then even worse is kind of back here is as the steering box broke and shifted over to the left, then all of a sudden we started running our steering shaft into the engine, and you can kind of see how it is all chewed up back there, the steering shaft. So that's something else that's going to have to be replaced and fixed. Besides that, those were our big major damage points. We did end up losing all the lights across the front of the grill. The grill's being held on by straps right now, so that was basically destroyed as we mowed over some bushes. We were able to go to our backup lights during the race. We lost our mirror. We lost one of our bedsides. We got damage all over this thing. There's scratches everywhere, but I think it did overall pretty good. I mean, we drove it off of the course, and that's saying something. The truck did pretty good. It would have made it to the end had we had a little bit more time for the race, but that's how the Baja 1000 goes. You have distance and you got time, and you got to get there before the end of the time. So we'll get it next year.
That's a ride with the Jingo. Oh my goodness. 1400 class, I love this car. My goodness, this thing is gorgeous. Talk about nostalgia.
We're back for our third attempt at this.
Great to see this truck.
Man, we're so excited. And just let me start by saying to the people in Ensenada and the people in Mexico, thank you so much for doing this and keeping this going every year. You're making it survive all the things we did in the last couple of years, and it's just so awesome to see the crowd's back, everything's back. It's really exciting for our racing team. We're just so happy to be here. And you know, for a bunch of young guys who've been watching this for years, becoming old guys and making dreams come true, this is just such a blast.
I know there's a lot of guys I talk to. It's like checking the bucket list off for them too, a lot of the younger and some older guys. I know one time to one motorcycle team, they said, yeah, the Iron Man, he got hurt. He asked us, so I called up my friends, they all got here. They called him on Sunday, they all came down. Did you pre-run? No. No, we're just going to go race the Baja 1000.
You know, kind of the same way here. We've got a bunch of friends. We're from Colorado, San Diego, Texas, and it's just good buddies. We come out here, we did pre-run. You know, we did a lot of studying, that kind of stuff. We did a lot of testing on the truck. But, you know, just not at the point where we can pre-run just yet. We come out here and support each other through this whole thing. We're not trying to go fast, trying to get to the finish line and see if we can get there. There was one other person in this class with us, so
know what, you got to finish this race, and that's what it's all about, Dave. And who's all starting, finishing, in the middle.
Yeah, you bet. So to start this thing is my buddy Barrett Core. We've been friends for a long time. He was an A-10 pilot in the Air Force, and his co-driver is going to be my buddy David Lasser. Next is going to be my brother Mike here is going to be driving with my good buddy Denny. We've been friends for like 30 years. And then we're getting one of our mechanics, Josh Moore, will be driving, and Ryan Nunez, my buddy from San Diego, Salesforce guy, super smart guy. And then I'm going to be there to finish this thing off with my co-driver Dan. We just got done racing the California 300 together. We're trying to get this thing across the finish line here.
Really cool. I see a lot of great sponsors here, but I noticed this Fields of Honor on there.
You know what? I would like to say first off, we are honored to be the Desert Racetrack for Folds of Honor. And what they do, if you don't know what they are, is they provide scholarships and just money to families who have either lost a parent, either in combat or were a first responder. And that's something that's new this year. And they do a really great job. If you're interested in donating money to them, you can either go to their website or you can go to our website, ntdracing.com. The first link there is how you can give to Folds of Honor, and their amazing cause. Also, something unique about our team is we got a lot of airline pilots on our team, and one of the things that you'll find that's universal across all the airlines is that we all use iPads in our jets, and we all use a case called the Pivot Case. That's made by Flyboys. We put these things in our truck. We've been racing them because what's cool about it is that we're trying to keep it on a budget here. And so I took this thing to my little kid who was watching farming videos, and now we're racing with it at the Baja 1000, and it's been a great setup for us for the last 3 years, and we've refined it a bit. The Pivot Case mount is just bulletproof. It goes through the worst turbulence in all the airliners all over the globe, and it definitely is great here at the Baja 1000. We have another great sponsor on the side of our truck, Industrial Power. And they have 3 different big shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They do diesel work, anything, from any kind of small truck all the way up to fire trucks. If you got something and you're just really looking for that amazing customer experience, Industrial Power is a place to go, and you can find them